Um, Good afternoon. This is Jamie Green, and I am coming back to you again with a conversation with my number one son. And once again, I thank you for taking the time to talk to me today and share our conversation with the Let's Talk Destiny audience. So welcome back.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk today about this excessive heat issue in our prisons. Uh, Nationwide, there are stories and newscasts and so forth about the heat that we are experiencing all across the country, across the world actually. But we're going to talk about this one right now. And people are, complaining about just being out in the heat, how it's affecting them health wise. Someone was telling me the other day that they were riding down the street and they saw a man laying in the middle of the road, and he had fallen off his, I think he was on a riding lawnmower, and he had a heat stroke. So I'm thinking about, yeah, and so they went over and helped him, call the ambulance, this, that, and other. And so I'm thinking about people who are working outside in the heat, people, but at the end of that, they have the opportunity to go into an air-conditioned facility to get ice water or whatever, whenever they choose to. But one of the things that concerns me and disturbs me as an advocate for incarcerated persons are the stories that I'm also reading in the news about people who are locked up in prisons where there is excessive heat, and people are experiencing major health challenges. Some are even dying. There's always a story from the prison system in Texas about inmates who are being affected, but inmates are being affected in every state. So I wanted to bring this to the attention of my audience because a lot of times people, and we know this, to be fact, a lot of times people don't pay attention to things that don't impact them personally. But as I said, as an advocate for incarcerated persons and always talking about the impact of incarceration on families, this is one of my concerns and my issues right now. So I wanted to talk to you as a person who's behind this concrete plantation about how the heat is impacting you and others who are in there with you. Some of the issues that have been raised about this is that, the overcrowding, it increases the violence. There's a lack of medical treatment for people who may be even experiencing heat strokes or whatever the case may be. So what is your experience right now with regard to the heat in the prison?
First, let me say it's unfortunate that people don't see how this affects. And this is one of the reasons that this country is in the predicament that it's in. Because people can't seem to see how a system means that everything is part of the same will. Nothing is separate.
Right.
So the CEOs, they come in here and have to work in the very same heat that they cry, complain about, and sometimes have to get medical attention. They're not in here doing time either. They come from outside. But it's not until they get here that they realize, wait a minute, maybe I should be saying something. And same thing goes for the family members who may come to visit, or even those on the outside who have to deal with the people that are coming home and they're extra frustrated due to days when you have to deal with heat. So I would advise people to start understanding and getting a clear picture on humanity and that everything is interdependent upon one another.
Yeah.
Not by yourself. Don't stand alone. What happens to the next man happens to you.
Yes.
And I would advise people to take that more serious. Now, as far as the actual heat process in prison, I mean, you gotta imagine every cell, or if we sit inside of, made of concrete steel. So if you go outside on a hot day, sun is shining, and you place your hand on the asphalt, probably not gonna be able to keep your hand there for more than 3 to 5 seconds.
Right.
So you get a good picture of how concrete is still heats up. Now we're in these small boxes, 2 men. Some prisons you go to, some jails you go to, they got 3 people, maybe 4 in these little spaces. But you got people in these little rooms, concrete and steel. There's no air conditioning. And most of the time there's no air circulating, period. The window is so small, you literally don't get any breeze coming in.
Awesome.
Now, those are just, the conditions of how the cell is built. But then you take into account, you have 2 people, 3 people, 4 people in here that have to breathe the same cell air that is not circulating. Now, you got to take into account that if it's 90 degrees outside, and like you said, the brother fell off of the lawnmower and had a heat stroke. Now that means that in this steel box, this concrete box, it's going to be about 110, 115, right?
Yeah.
And again, you had many people. You got a lot of people in here, a lot of older people. You had people in here that had health problems like cancer, diabetes, just not even talking about, the average mental health issue. I'm talking about, health issues where people are on their last leg.
Yeah.
Got all of that going on. And then sometimes you have a shortage on ice. So it's almost no relief whatsoever. Right?
Yeah.
So you already know that the healthcare system in prison is usually done through private contractors because, again, it's all a business, which is the problem with most of the prisons and why they don't put the proper funding into seeing to it that the prisoners are treated with human dignity, constitutional rights, and just respect.
Yeah.
Even these things are not done because they're private owned, private investors. And so your healthcare providers, the same thing. Again, you have a heat stroke, fall out due to the heat, take you up there, give you a Tylenol, send you back. So just take into account again, right? Then you spend most of your time in the cell. Like when you in a medium security prison or a maximum security prison, like I know us, we might come out an hour and a half in the afternoon, maybe come out, we might get yard depending on, You know, if they feel like having, that's for an hour. And then we might come out an hour and a half in the evening. So if you count 24 hours out of the day, and I just read off to you about 4 hours. So you're talking about 20 hours in the cell in that concrete box.
Wow.
So again, it's almost hard to paint the picture for people who have absolutely no understanding what that means. So if you go sit in your closet, right? Just go sit in your closet, sit in there for 20 hours with no air circulating.
Yeah.
And then you may start to get a picture. And then even a lot of these politicians, these judges, these state attorneys, and a lot of these hypocritical people who agree with a lot of politicians and unfair sentencing the judges. A lot of the so-called citizens, they have never even experienced what really goes on. And that's why I'm a firm believer in, before you allow a person to be a magistrate where they're sending people to prison, before you allow a person to be a state's attorney where they're asking for people to go to prison, and before you allow corporate citizens to vote on any legislation that will send people to prison, I'm a firm believer that people should go into a prison. You should experience and see what it is that you are going to subject a person to before you just have the right to up and have some say-so in a person's life and the torturous conditions that they will have to be subjected to for years, and sometimes for the rest of their life.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's just so many angles that come along with it. He just, it's like putting gas on a fire that's already burnt.
Right, right.
You know? So,
I remember one time you said to me that people, if a person gets caught leaving their dog in the car in the heat in the summertime, they can get a ticket or they can go to jail. And so it's like people have more consideration for the dogs than they do for humans that are locked up in these hot boxes in prison. And I never forgot that, because I've several times seen people, have dogs in the car and the window cracked a little bit, and somebody saying, "Oh, I'm gonna call the cops. They shouldn't have that dog in there. It's too hot." But when it comes to human beings, we have in this country, you and I've also talked about this, we have this automatic lock them up response anyway to everything. And even when people are in prison, let's talk about that for just a minute. When you're already in prison, you can still be locked down. What are some of the reasons why they lock you down in prison?
well, it can be a number of things. Of course, you had some of the most serious events. You stab somebody, fighting, caught engaging in any type of violent behavior. And that also means that if you are attacked and you defend yourself, you will still go to lockup. But you also find that most of the time people are going to lockup for things that are quite foolish, to be honest, such as, like sometimes when they do count, you might have a female that's doing count. So sometimes brothers got to use the bathroom or something. They'll put the lockup, so as not to be seen by the female.
Right.
Well, depending on who the officer is, some of them don't like it. They say that you was interfering with the count. They'll lock you up, put you on lockup.
Wow.
People can go to lockup for having wine. You can go for having contraband. That could be maybe having a cardboard box in yourself. Again, it depends on, the level of maturity of the officer that you just happen to have a running with.
Yeah.
So lockup exacerbates the problem even more, because with everything that I told you about the cells that we're in, the lockup conditions are 10 times worse.
Wow.
I mean, and it's constantly, and it's just like the street, right? You constantly see bad reports sometimes about murders and that. But believe me, you're not seeing every murder. And it's the same way in prison.
Yeah.
People are hanging themselves, killing themselves all the time. Don't think because you're not hearing about it or seeing it that it's not happening.
Right.
But again, these conditions weigh down on people. And that's just another consequence of it.
Because I know, like, when it's really hot, you don't feel like being bothered. You don't want people to keep talking to you, asking you a bunch of questions. You just want to be left alone. And that's at home. When you're in prison, you don't have control over that as much. You still are being told when you can go take a shower, how much time you have in the rec area. People are fighting and fussing because they're hot. And, it's like the environment. I can't even imagine the level of tension and anxiety. And then you have a person younger than you in a uniform telling you to be quiet because you hot and you aggravated. So I can only imagine the responses of the incarcerated people in situations like that. Now, you and I have talked about also, and you break this down really well, and I'd like you to do it for my audiences. We've talked about rights of inmates. And I would just want you just to briefly to talk to us about our constitutional rights for people who are incarcerated.
All right. Well, first let me say this, right? Because before you even get to the rights of being,
you have 60 seconds remaining.
Wow, I wasn't keeping
right,
track of my time.
Well, I'm a call back, and we'll just have to finish out like that.
Okay.
All right. Family is love.
Family is forever.
That's all you right there.
Okay.
You have 30 seconds remaining.